Welcome to the New Money Habits Podcast, where we talk about how to create a better plan for your money so you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. Here are your hosts, Sarah Jones and Nino Villa.
Welcome back, budgeteers. Today we want to talk about inflation. I'm Coach Nino Villa, and alongside of me, as always, my partner on the airwaves, Sarah Jones. And when we talk about inflation today and what's up with it, we're going to make sure to keep our conversation apolitical. We are not interested in donkeys or elephants. That's not what we're here for. But we want to just talk about what's going on with inflation and how that's affecting your budget. And so, Sarah, right before we got on, you had said something about controlling something.
Yes. We can't do anything. We cannot control inflation. We can't do anything about that. But we have a choice in how we handle it, and we have a choice on how we control it in our own homes. And so that's where our focus needs to be, right? It doesn't need to be on all the other junk out there. It just needs to be, what can we do in our own homes to make this tolerable and to get through it, right? Because this isn't going to be around forever. Nino, you had said, it's very much like a season, right? And it is.
That's right. I might not have been around, or like I was around, but I might not have been aware of things going on in like the mid 80s where there was some hyperinflation that led to like a recession and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might not have a ton of experience with inflation, like in my adult life and paying my bills and whatnot. But we know that these things are seasonal. We know that they come and they go. We experience really good economies. We've experienced not so great economies. I mean, I am old enough that I was an adult through 2008 and the whole housing market crash and all of that. And right. My wife and I back then, we had like a little saying that we don't participate in recessions. And so I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying not to participate in inflation, but that's a little more challenging a thing. But yeah, I think You're absolutely right. Today's focus is about controlling what we can control and controlling, the plan and what we do in our own household so that we can just kind of weather the storm until it all just kind of normalizes again, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Right. And, I think it's important to mention that it doesn't matter where you're at financially. It doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It affects us all. What we're going through, this inflation right now, it affects every single one of us. We're talking about it. We're dealing with it, right? So it doesn't mean, I've mentioned I'm 100% debt free. It does not mean that it is not directly affecting my household, right? I have clients that have a lot of debt. It doesn't mean that it's not directly affecting their household. So I think it's just important to mention that it affects us all. Now, albeit differently, right? I mean, it affects all of us differently, but it affects us no matter where we're at. And so sometimes I think people fall into the mindset that, if I just made more money, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. And you know what? It might not be as big of a deal, but it's still going to affect you. We have chosen, my husband and I have talked a lot about it. What do we need to do in our household, right? Where are the adjustments that we need to make so we can weather the storm, so we can get through it, so we can, so it doesn't take us off track of where we're going and what we're trying to do. We're full-time RVers, Nino, and we were just talking, fuel prices. That's a big expense for a full-time RVer on the road, right? And so what do we need to do?
I would imagine
to make those adjustments, right? And so we talked about a couple of things. And it's okay to make those adjustments. I think too, I want to just put it out there that it's okay to make adjustments to your plan. We should be. I don't think we do enough of that sometimes, right? That
Yes. And I think that's where this process begins for all of us. You're absolutely right. It affects every single one of us, whether you make $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year. It doesn't matter. You're being impacted by inflation one way or another. And so where do you begin? Well, you begin where you were just alluding to, and that is, let's review and revise the game plan. So our game plan is that budget that we have. If you budget according to new money habit principles, that means that you're budgeting every pay period. And so you're looking and you're kind of reviewing, bi-weekly, every week, whatever that is for you. But it's time to review it. It's time to not just kind of build out the budget for next month based on maybe the previous month, but it's time to really, peel back on a couple of the categories and make some decisions. And those decisions may be for a season, or you may decide to make permanent changes, but it's time to review it. And no better place to start than maybe even with like the gas budget. So I'm curious, you and your husband, you are full-time RVers. What have you guys decided just for yourselves when it comes to gasoline prices?
Well, we are making fewer trips, so we're being more intentional, number one, with just the trips that we're making. As full-time RVers, part of why we are living this lifestyle is because we want to explore, right? We want to get out and explore the different states, different areas, that's part of it, but we're being a lot more intentional with that. So making fewer trips is a big one. We are looking into a couple of different gas apps, right? Apps for getting cheaper fuel. There are a lot of places that, have these kinds of perks on top of just your regular grocery store rewards, which we do use, but our normal grocery store isn't in all the states, right? And so what can we do that's consistent and using a gas app to find the cheapest fuel and to maybe even get a couple of bucks back on that. And, here's what I want to mention, that, a dollar is a dollar. If we can save a buck, I'm all for it. Sometimes I think we need to make these grand things, right? These grand decisions and grand changes. We're like, oh, I can save 10,000 a year. Well, that's awesome. But also don't be afraid to look at some of the smaller changes that you can make too. And, so fewer trips, finding, one of those gas apps and using that to get the most cost-effective fuel, and also making sure our vehicle's in good running order. Making sure it's up to date on the maintenance, because if your maintenance isn't, up to date, your tires are low, you end up costing yourself a little bit more in the fuel area too. So those are a couple of things. And you know what? And we have a motorcycle too that, so we're trying, because that gets, so our truck pulling our fifth wheel, 10 miles to the gallon, motorcycle, 50 miles to the gallon. So we are choosing to take that more places too. Because we can get a lot farther. So a couple of the areas that, just with fuel that we're making some major adjustments in.
Yeah. I was going to go, I'm so glad you went there. I was going to go there too. So we have a 2-car household as well. And the minivan lugging us all around gets about 20 miles to the gallon, but my older but much smaller car gets like 30 miles to the gallon. So now on a weekend when the wife and I maybe have to kind of split up and I'm going somewhere with our son and she's going somewhere with our daughter, normally the minivan is hers and the smaller car is mine. But now if she's traveling a farther distance, it's maybe we should switch vehicles, and it can just be those small little decisions, but those small little decisions consistently add up to big things. Yes. So to your point about saving $1 might not seem very significant, but you save $1 here, you save a couple of bucks there, you keep saving, and all of a sudden those savings together add up to be something that might be more significant.
And I think, can I just make a point with that too, really quick, that, for somebody who's on a really tight budget, every single dollar makes a big difference, right? When your budget's really tight. when your budget isn't maybe necessarily as tight and you've got a little bit more, leeway, some flexibility in it, I think it comes down to what's important to you too. And for me, I want to have more of my dollars to be spending on experiences and less going to fuel. So I'm willing to make more adjustments in some of those areas. So I've still got the dollars to spend on, the other areas that maybe are a little bit more important to me. Right. And so, to make those choices, and again, those are choices that all of us can make. If a certain area in your budget is really important to you, if you're working really hard on that debt payoff and you want to keep going, then you can choose to make some adjustments in your fuel, the gas budget, right? And so it comes back. I want to hit that point home a lot, that we really, each of us have a choice here, that we're not just at the mercy of what else is going on, that we have a choice every single day in our household how we handle this.
That's right. Excuse me. And I think it speaks to the importance about going back and reviewing the plan. And remember, your plan, another principle that we teach is that your plan should be prioritized. And so if your plan is written out in a way that the top priorities are literally at the top of the page and the lower priorities make their way to the bottom of the page, well, then you can kind of hang out at the bottom of your budget and ask the question, what here do we want to either change or eliminate, or whatever the case may be, in order to focus on the things that are important to us. So I think about right now, not only are gas prices on the rise, trips to the grocery store is costing more and more money each time, but some of the big subscriptions out there have just increased their rates, and Amazon Prime is one of them. And so both their monthly and their annual subscription rates have gone up. Netflix is in the process currently of raising their rates. And so even there, where maybe those subscriptions are lower down on the budget because getting to and from work, so gas is higher up on the budget than that. Putting food on the table ought to be higher than that. And so maybe you're staring at some of these subscriptions, asking yourself, do I really need these right now? Right. Maybe you're going to shift focus for a little while. I'm pretty sure that I've shared this on the podcast before, but I'll share it again. When we first started our new money habits, there was actually two very significant things that my wife and I did that were things that were only for a season. Actually, I guess three technically. One of them was, at the time we had two cars. I was working from home. My wife stays at home. So we sold the second car. And I wasn't even including that in the two things, but we've now since gotten back to two cars. So we only went down to one car for a season. But the other two that were a little bit crazier that really got people scratching their heads, or just they couldn't believe it, is one, as big of a sports fan as I am, and I needed my satellite dish in order to see my favorite sports team, I got rid of the satellite dish I think we got rid of it for about a year and a half before we cleaned up a bunch of debt. And after we cleaned up a bunch of debt, the wife and I looked at each other and said, hey, I really want this back. And she's like, yeah, me too. So we got it back. But we went a year and a half without. The other one is we went from paying $160 a month for two cell phones down to one shared cell phone for $50 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. That's usually
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's usually the reaction that one garners is, you did what now? But again, it was for a season, and that season was probably even shorter. It was maybe 6 months or so, but for a period of time, we shared a cell phone. And after some time had gone by, and again, debt had got cleaned up, the other things that were more important to me at that time, once those got cleaned up, then it was, hey, you know what? We can afford to have two cell phones again, but we were just smarter this time. And instead of being in a contract and having two phones that are financed and paying $160 a month, we found other alternatives that allowed us to pay $90 a month and, So there's just a couple of examples of getting back into the plan called the budget, reviewing it, and starting to make some adjustments.
Sure. And that's similar. My husband and I, when we were kind of in the midst, kind of the middle ground, right, of our journey, and our main focus at that time was getting a good budget, feeling comfortable, and getting, out of debt. We canceled, same thing, our satellite dish. And, that's been probably almost 12 years. We have, and we chose to never get it back. But it was a big one, right? That was a big one. And Nino, you mentioned a couple of good things in there, which I think sometimes we forget. I have certainly been guilty of this, but just to reevaluate the plans that we do have, right? So maybe we don't want to drop them. Maybe if I had to share a cell phone with my husband, I don't know, it might be kind of dicey, right? But if there are a lot of new companies out that I have clients that use these new services that they're paying $10, $20 a month for good cell coverage, right? So I think this is an opportunity to reevaluate, like you said, and maybe it's not even canceling a service, but maybe it's looking to see, what do these services offer? Cell phone companies now, lots of new things going on. So maybe you're paying for Netflix. I'll just use that. But maybe you can get it free through your cell phone company with the plan that you have, right? And so look at these options, so that way you're not really giving up anything other than the bill. We get so into, our day to day that sometimes I think we forget, and really just a good evaluation of our financial plan, right? Just going from top to bottom, most important to least important, like you said, and deciding where can we make some adjustments because we need to. So where are we going to make those adjustments?
Yeah. Yeah. We do live in a day and an age where bundling services is usually going to save you some money, right? And so depending on your cell phone carrier, if they have one of these streaming services that you're already paying for, maybe you can save that way. That's brilliant. I think there's other places where, if you haven't done so already, like auto and homeowners insurance bundled might save you some money. So to your point, it's not necessarily even about eliminating anything as much as it is about simply eliminating a bill because you've been able to bundle it with something else. I think that's really smart. Other parts of the plan that kind of just strike me as important to really look at are things like your grocery bill as well. When I think about kind of even our grocery habits over the last, say, 3 to 6 months here in my household, and I'm actually seeing this now take shape with a lot of my clients as well, and that is there's more like meal planning before going shopping to be like, these are the very specific items I'm looking for. And so many grocers now have apps where you can kind of go online and kind of put some stuff in a cart and just get a sense of how much is this and whatnot before actually, pulling the trigger and buying it. So with a little bit of meal prep, with a little bit of thoughtfulness around what are we going to get from the grocery store, and also the number of trips. I'm seeing a shift to, instead of grocery shopping, once a week or even multiple times a week, people are getting to a point where they're trying to do it once a pay period. So maybe if that's biweekly, it's once every 2 weeks, or even in some cases once a month, and really just buying what you need for the month and really disciplining yourself to staying within what's in the pantry, what's within the refrigerator, and really, go shopping, put that stuff in those places, and then really stick to, I only make meals at home with the items that I have.
Absolutely. And utilize, online coupons, right? And sometimes, my eyes have been opened a little bit more because I am in the Phoenix area right now, and the grocery store options are vast. As where I came from, only a couple, right? And so, but when you have so many options, you have options to choose stores that are more cost effective. We found a store, now we have to drive a little bit farther, but I still did our numbers, right? And we're saving about $40 a grocery trip, even driving farther to this grocery store versus going to the one that's closest to us. So take some time to, work out your numbers and see where can I actually save money? Because just because the store is closer and you're saving on gas doesn't mean that it's actually cheaper all the way around, right? And so I think just being a little diligent, and running your numbers, spending a little bit of time, as you said, and I always say, make it a game in the grocery store. Give yourself a certain amount of time so you can get in and get out in under, within that time, because it eliminates the wandering of the aisles and maybe throwing some extra stuff in your cart, right? So make it a game. Let's make it fun. I'm giving myself 15 minutes to get in and out with everything on my list and see how you do, right? Because let's be honest, some of this, it's not enjoyable. So any way that I can help pull in a little bit of fun and, just put a smile on somebody's face, and let's do it so we can get through the painful part of this a little bit easier, right? So make it a game.
I really like that. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that it's about forming new habits, right? So if one of your new habits is I time myself at the grocery store, or one of my new habits is I actually put together a very detailed, specific list for the meals that I'm going to be making for that week or whatever. Like, these habits compounded on one another can really help you to make what could end up being some really significant changes. And something else I wanted to comment on as you were talking about just the grocery store in general, and this even goes back to like bundling services and whatnot, is too often we pay for convenience. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves personally. So my wife and I, we like to host friends and family over at the house. And when we do, it's one of the few times that we'll specifically go to the grocery store for soda. And oftentimes, or not oftentimes, let's just say, we'll call a spade. The wife's preference is cans. That's the preference. The preference is get soda cans. But I can buy a 12-pack for what, $5, $6 now, and I can get a 2-liter for $1.50. Right. So why am I paying for the convenience of them being individually packaged and these sorts of things? And that's just one example, but that idea of we constantly pay for convenience, it really, it adds up. It really does add up.
It does. And I'm going to have a little bit of a debate here with you. So it's soda?
Sure.
Or is it's
no,
pop?
It's pop from where it's pop where I'm originally from, but it's soda out here.
Oh, I haven't made that jump. I've always called it pop. So it's just a little bit of a debate, sidetracking the whole thing just to get that out of it.
Well, now we're going to take a moment to just dive into this. So I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. So in Western New York, it's totally pop. Where are you originally from, Sarah?
Colorado.
And in Colorado, it's pop?
Most, yes. Natives, it's pop.
That's shocking to me. I figured once you got past, like, I don't know, Wisconsin, like pop was soda everywhere else, like west of there.
And then you get the crazies that call it soda pop. And I'm just like, okay, you need to make up your mind. You cannot have it both ways.
You're just being indecisive. You're playing exactly. You're just playing the fence.
Right.
No, and of course there's in the like Texas and other places in the South, like no matter what you're drinking, it's a Coke, right? So it doesn't, you could be drinking Dr. Pepper, but you're drinking Coke apparently because everything's a Coke.
Right.
Another fun side tip real quick. So I used to work in the restaurant industry, and I remember there was a shift in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where apparently like if somebody asked for a Coke, but your restaurant served Pepsi, you had to like distinguish that. Like you had to say, I'm sorry, we don't serve Coke. Is Pepsi okay? Wild. Just wild.
Wow.
Anyway.
It's nuts.
So
anyways.
We have digressed. We will get back on track here. But my point about soda or pop, if you prefer, is, like I said, just one of many examples of convenience where we end up overspending on something simply because it's a little bit easier. Another thing that comes to mind, and this is not necessarily convenience, but maybe, is I think about some of these services, these subscriptions that we all pay for, like an Amazon Prime. And it might be more convenient to pay it monthly, but it's cheaper to pay it annually. Right. And so even there, you can save yourself 10% of the costs simply by changing a monthly subscription to an annual subscription. Because I'm sorry, but if you have Amazon Prime, are you giving that up anytime soon?
We considered it, and we decided that was, we talked about it because, ours annual, it's going up, not a lot, but $20 bill. We're evaluating everything, right? And so we did talk about it and said, do we use it enough to justify paying this amount of money a year? And, the consensus was yes. Our kids are still on the plan. They're adults. We all live in different areas. Yes, it's going to work. So we thought about it, but we are keeping it.
Yeah. Actually, right now, it might be a pretty good steal, with as much as we get delivered to the house, and that reduces our need to go somewhere and spend that money in gas. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been trying to calculate, do I spend more in gas, or am I spending more, or am I getting more out of the free shipping through Prime? And now it's like, I don't even really have to do the calculation. I can tell you I'm saving far more money with getting things shipped to the house than if I had to go running. And that has something to do with like my location. I just happen to be like 15 miles away from most things. So going out and getting things becomes like a 30-mile round trip. And that adds up.
It does. And here's another quick little side note. I had clients the other night. They went through and this goes back to evaluating what subscriptions you need. They canceled 18 Amazon, like the subscribe and say 18, 1-8 that they had, that they decided that they could cancel because they didn't really need those. 18. And that just goes to show, Nino, sometimes that we get into the habit, that we just, he also, it's funny, decided that shredded cheese was lazy. So they are no longer buying shredded cheese. They're only buying block, and they're going to shred it themselves. Which was a whole funny discussion, but it was the convenience thing. And he said, and that's what made them go through, some of their other subscriptions, right? Like, what are we doing that's convenience based that we don't actually, that really isn't important to us? Number one, it's not important. Number two, we're really not saving money, right? We get into these habits just because we've done it for so long. So I think now is just a good time to go back through and reevaluate all of your expenses and where can you make some adjustments.
So up to about maybe a week and a half ago, I would have conversations with clients similar about their needs versus their wants. And I got to tell you, I changed the language about a week and a half ago because of one of our partners at New Money Habits, Maria. Like she always does she always has a great way of helping you see things through a slightly different prism. And so in a time like this, she was talking about conveniences and essentials. So what are your essentials and what are the conveniences? Because, and she's absolutely right. Most people are not willing to give up their wants, right? Like needs and wants, you have to get your needs. You should maybe give up some of your wants or whatever. And really, this is not a conversation about what you should give up. There's another side to this equation, and we'll address that in just a second. But usually it's easier to kind of give up things and to eliminate some of those expenses to help, generate more of a surplus in your budget. So we tend to spend a lot of time there because it's the easier of the two.
Sure.
But what she was talking about is a lot of times people are willing to give up conveniences sooner than they're willing to give up wants. So if you think about, and I go back to even the analogy or the story about the soda, and it probably still wasn't essential, but I'll use the word essential anyway. It was essential to have soda at the party. It was not essential to have canned soda at the party. Right? That was a convenience that we were willing to give up. So I just wanted to share that with our listeners because I think there's power in those words. And when you look at your budget and you're thinking about what's essential versus what are some conveniences that, again, we might be able to go without for a season, it's just a great way of looking at it.
I love that. I love that. And, I might start incorporating some of that. I quit using the wants versus needs language some time ago. And I simply say, what is important to you? Is this important to you right now? Because if it's not, then you've got a choice, right? And if it is, then great, you've got a choice. But I agree, the wants versus needs, I've kind of shifted away from that because it makes us feel guilty for wanting things, and we shouldn't feel guilty for wanting things, right? And
it's a good point.
So it's normal. We should want things. And so when we are led to believe we have to make a choice between those, I don't generally like that, but it's very much the language that we use, right? And so I always say, is this important to me right now? Is this important to you right now? Or is there another area that's maybe more important, right? Is there an area that you're trying to focus on? And so a language that we use extremely, and that's why I keep driving home the point of we have a choice, so focus on the areas that you can control, the choices that you can make, and use that language. We can all be upset with what's going on outside, but use that as fuel to determine what choices you are making and what new habits you want to create, right? I think there's some really good things that can come out of this when we're put into a situation as inflation, right? I think there's some really good things that can come out of this. And, you might agree that, and you had even mentioned it, sometimes we make these choices for a season, but it turns out that we kind of want to hang on to them a little bit longer because we see, you know what? I kind of like this new way. This is serving me pretty darn well right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's get started on something and kind of see how it works for you. And sometimes you're going to surprise yourself and kind of realize you like the new way better, whatever that is. If it means you got rid of a subscription or, you're behaving differently at the grocery store, whatever that is, you might just decide, hey, I like this a lot better. So a couple of minutes ago, I mentioned that we usually focus on the expenses side of things. It's kind of easier to kind of focus on what you can cut out of the budget and, where are these places that you can save. But there is another side to this equation. There is an income side to this equation. And so sometimes it's about earning more money to build up a surplus and not just about cutting expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know about you, Sarah. I know for me, and this is much more relevant 6+ months ago, but it might even be more relevant like pre-pandemic. But there seemed to be like this trend of a side hustle, right? So maybe you have your normal 9 to 5 job and whatever that is, but an easy way to make some extra cash is to find a side hustle, whatever that might be. For a buddy of mine, it was he was buying up goods pretty cheaply and turning around and selling them on Amazon for a profit. And so he was able to find a side hustle doing that. My coaching practice started as a side hustle while I had a full-time W-2. And of course, some of the most popular ones right now are things like ride share and food delivery and that sort of thing. But so obviously there's an opportunity on that side of the equation as well.
Absolutely. And some, let's be real. Sometimes we don't want to have to do that, right? But I think there's a lot of ways that we can increase income in side gig, but let's not forget the opportunity to ask for a raise at work. I think sometimes we forget that we have that option. We might not get it, but you never know unless you try. So, if a side gig and something that you really don't want to take a look at, don't forget to ask, and don't forget that you have the ability to ask for a raise at work. Now, if you feel you deserve, now, if you're a crap employee, and I'm just going to say this like it is, don't do that, right? Because you're going to find yourself probably without a job. Mm-hmm. So be a good employee, right? Take pride in what you do, but it never hurts to ask for a raise at work. And along the same lines, because of everything that's happened the past couple of years, more employees are allowing more remote work. So that might be an option too. You could say, maybe it's not a raise, but maybe you can negotiate a different working relationship, right? So maybe you work from home 1 or 2 days a week. So that cuts down on your fuel. So you're essentially kind of giving yourself a raise, right? You're still working, but you don't have as many costs. So I just want to throw that out there. Some, little tips that if you don't want to look for a side gig, there's still some options with your regular job as well.
Yeah. It's so important to remember that being a good employee and then having good productive conversations and negotiations is important. I understand that if you are at a place and you experience layoffs, one of the last things you might think about doing is actually asking for a raise. But there's a certain set of logic that would tell you that might be one of the best times to ask for a raise. Because at the end of the day, the business did just save itself some money or whatever. And that doesn't necessarily mean that tough times are over. But the expectation of your workload is going to go up. So shouldn't the expectation of your compensation go up? And
Absolutely.
Sometimes compensation is not just dollars and cents. Maybe it's more or better paid time off. Maybe it is an agreement to get some work from home capacity. Maybe right now you can't work from home at all, or maybe you can only work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Well, could you increase that? Which is going to, of course, reduce things like not only gasoline for the commute, but commute time and whatnot.
Sure.
So there's things to be negotiated there. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And sometimes don't lose sight too that even if your company is maybe in a harder place or whatever, they're usually still like trying to fill certain positions or whatnot. So be on the internal job boards looking at what else is out there, even internally, that you might be able to move into that compensates differently.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because even if layoffs are happening or, the company is downsizing a little bit, it doesn't mean they haven't closed their doors. Business is still moving as usual, right? And I'm just going to say that most of the time companies don't want to close their doors. So if they've got an eager employee that wants a raise, but your workload is increased too, chances are they're going to be pretty darn excited about that. And, be happy you weren't one of the ones that got laid off, right? There's a reason why you're there. So show them, show the people that matter, show your coworkers, show your boss, that they made the right choice in keeping you, and you're eager to fill some of those gaps that have just come about. Sometimes it's hard to look for a side gig too. Sometimes it kind of hurts us in the pride. I've definitely been that person. Sometimes, as you said, we've got kind of used to being home, maybe more around our family the past couple years. And so leaving them more, it's hard. And talking about, we're talking about inflation, fuel prices. And so, gosh, I'm looking for a side gig, some of the deliveries. Why do I want to spend more in gas? Is it really worth it? And I would encourage everybody to just do their own due diligence and, run some numbers and actually investigate. But there are also a lot of opportunities for remote work. Companies are hiring remote workers more now than they ever more now than they ever have in the past. And, so you're still at home. You're not, maybe you've got a few extra expenses. Maybe you need to upgrade your internet, or, maybe there's something along those lines. But, don't push the idea off the plate until you've really done some more investigating now, because increasing your income doesn't have to be as hard as we make it out to be.
Mm-hmm. That's right. There are so many different opportunities to make additional income. I think, and I fell a victim to this really early on. When I got laid off in 2012, that was kind of the spark to my new money habits and trying to figure out, like, okay, in that particular situation, I was laid off, I was given a severance, and so I had a safety net. But what would have happened had I not had that severance? I wouldn't have had a safety net. So I needed to do something different. And so early on, that was late 2012. So early 2013, I remember like sitting across the manager from a local pizzeria talking about possibly joining the team as a pizza delivery driver. I remember reaching back out to a national restaurant chain that I had worked for in my early 20s and thinking about waiting tables at night. Like I had, this was even after I was reemployed gainfully, W-2, full-time with a salary. I was like, something else needs to change though, because I want to get out of debt. I want to do these things. So I remember back then being very limited in the scope of what I thought was possible. And it wasn't until I found my way through some of this stuff and started teaching other people that I realized, wait a minute, I kind of have a knack for this. And so a financial coaching practice just kind of bloomed out of what was seemingly nowhere. And within a couple of months, I was earning more just coaching people financially than I would have had I taken the pizza delivery job or the waiting tables job. So I had a very limited idea of what was possible. And so there are so many possibilities out there. And it really is about maybe looking at, just looking into it and discovering what you're passionate about. Earlier, I mentioned a buddy of mine. He buys stuff up and then he sells it on Amazon, and for a nice little turnaround. And so if you like shopping, maybe this is it's something that you would enjoy doing, or whatever the case may be. But there's so many opportunities.
There really are. And, for a while, I don't mind sharing. I worked with a kids consignment sale for a while. My good friend at the time, she did it because she had, several little kids. My kids were older, but she said, hey, the owner needs some help. And it turned into making, and I'll say, a decent amount of money. And I bought used kids' clothes and toys and turned around and resold them and made a lot of money. It was crazy. So but I think, Nino, and I think, just to say, just be open, right? Be open and have your eyes open to the possibilities that are out there. Don't be closed off on, and because you never know when those opportunities kind of come knocking at the door. And if you're not open to receive them, then they're going to go away. So I always like to be open and say, what, I'll look at anything. Doesn't mean I have to say yes to everything, but I'll take a look at anything and see. But, increasing income, decreasing, reducing expenses, two of the ways, that we can beat and get through kind of the inflation season that we're in.
Yeah. Yep. And actually, there's one other quick hack that I want to share with our listeners about increasing your income. And it's really easy to do, especially if you are a W-2 employee, meaning you're employed anywhere and somebody's paying you a paycheck. Mm-hmm. That paycheck is having federal and state taxes withheld from it. Mm-hmm. And if you receive a large tax refund every single year, it's an indication that you are paying more out of your paycheck in taxes than you need to. So a quick hack is to actually adjust your federal tax withholdings so that money's actually coming back home to you every 2 weeks or every week, whatever you're paid. And so for more information on that, y'all should tune in next week when we're going to talk to you about taxes specifically. And we'll be sure to jump into that in more detail. But that is a quick hack on, think about this for a moment. Here's some math for you. If you have a $6,000 tax refund at the end of the year, that means you gave the federal government $500 more every single month than you needed to. So what would you do with a $500 raise next month? Mm-hmm. I would imagine it would go a long way to helping with any tightness you're feeling from all this inflation, to have another $500 coming home with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great point. Something, again, that we don't know that we can change. People, you have the ability to make those adjustments. And sometimes I don't think we know that we do. So always a great idea to take a look at it, because I'm not a tax professional, but, I think it's a good idea for everybody to just know their options, right? And to take a look at it, see if that might be another area to make an adjustment in. And, can I just throw something else out real quick, Nino, that,
of course,
we haven't really talked about this, and I have been in a situation where I was working my tail off and had a really hard time paying my bills. I was a single mom at the time, and my budget was tight, right? Just barely getting by. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are even not even single parents, but single parents and just really struggling. And your budget is you've got your plan, you've got your budget, but it's still really tight, and you're really having a difficult time. I just want to give you encouragement to reach out to some of the organizations and everything that are out there, because there are programs available to help people. And so often I hear, well, it's not that bad. We could be a lot worse. We could be in a lot worse situation. Maybe that's true, but programs exist to help us get through a difficult time. And so don't hesitate to reach out. your gas company, your electric company, reach out to those companies to see if they've got programs, rental assistance, see if there's some help in those areas to help, you. It's not a handout. It really is a hand up, and just to get on your feet if you're doing everything that you can now. So I just want to throw that out there because I know a lot of times people are afraid and embarrassed to ask and to use those programs, but that's what they're there for. So
yeah.
I just want to throw it out there to encourage people to don't let pride get in the way.
And I appreciate you kind of reminding us, because I'll tell you, for someone like myself, it's not even necessarily pride. It's I totally forget that those programs even exist. I mean, given the global pandemic, the last 2 years or whatnot, every time I log in to go pay my mortgage, it's like, do you need COVID-19 help, like relief? And, I feel fortunate that I haven't necessarily had to click on that link yet, but it's the only reminder that I've had that there's help out there. So this is a great reminder that, like you said, with your utility companies, there are probably programs that, based off your income or whatever, there'll be some type of what is the word I'm looking for? When the subsidy, when the government subsidizes a portion of your bill, it's great. It's a great reminder for anybody who's in a housing market like the Phoenix housing market, which has absolutely gone bananas over the last 12 months. I had a friend who was just priced out of the Phoenix market because his rent was going to go up by 25%. 25% increase on his rent. And so to have it never dawned on me to think, hey, instead of getting priced out, maybe there is a program that will help you to stay local and subsidize part of your rent or whatever the case may be. So it's a great reminder. And I thank you, Sarah, for sharing it.
Well, and, I've been in that situation to reach out to, different programs and, for help. And, I work with a lot of people that I encourage to reach out because they're in a really tight place. Right. And I'll just speak, from in the Phoenix area. So anybody that's listening, there are a ton of programs, And, I've talked to some of the program directors that said if they don't get enough response, they have to close the programs down. These programs need people to utilize them to stay afloat and to be relevant. And so if we're not using them, then they don't stick around. And so please, 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 food. There's so many food programs, and I know for sure that the electric company, one of the major electric companies, I just was at the Home and Garden Show a couple weekends ago. They had a big poster that said, if you need help, please contact them. So anybody that's in the Phoenix area with the major electric company, I know 100% for a fact that they've got help available. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
What a great reminder. And what a great topic. I mean, not a great, like a great discussion around a tough topic. That's what I meant to say. A great discussion around a tough topic. Inflation, like you said at the top, it really is affecting each and every one of us. It's affecting us in different ways, but we are all feeling the effects of rising prices for goods and services, and maybe our income not keeping up. I think back to, just a moment ago, I shared that my friend's rent was increasing by 25%. Unfortunately, his income was not. So he could not keep up with the rise in home prices. And so I think just as a reminder, it's a call to dive back into the plan and to really scrutinize the plan and look at, how has your grocery bill been affected? And maybe it hasn't. Maybe you're somebody who, as prices have risen, you've decided we're just not going to pick up a steak this time. And so you've been able to budget the same amount of money and you're just shopping a little bit differently. Maybe you're like my wife and I, and you're switching cars to save on gas, or we're just being even more diligent about our daily and our daily trips on the weekend. Like, where do we need to go? And really thinking about the order in which to visit everything. I'm looking at the map earlier and earlier in the day to map out where we're going, because with all of the road improvements that are happening in the greater Phoenix area, there are times that freeways are completely shut down, and I don't want to be sitting in traffic for an hour and a half burning up gas. So it's about finding alternate routes, and it's just being really diligent and mindful. But this really is a call to all of our listeners. Really dig into that plan of yours called the budget, and start looking at and scrutinizing each of these different things, the services. Can you bundle? Can you eliminate? Can you do something different? And remember that every choice that you make is your choice to make. And it doesn't have to last a lifetime. It may be only for a season, or you may decide, I really like the way I'm doing this, and this is the way I plan on doing it from here on out.
Absolutely. I shared too, we're going through everything, all of our budget, what do we, and I'll just say real quick, my storage unit, they're increasing my rent on my storage unit by 30%, a 30% increase on storage units. So we've decided we're buying a storage, shed. We've got a friend that is allowing us to keep it on their property. And while, this is interesting, Nino, well, it's actually not going to save us money. It's going to be the same amount unless storage increases, right? So we're spending a significant amount to buy a storage container. But the difference is we can turn around and sell that later on, right? And get some of our money back, whereas we can't with a storage unit. So keep some of those things in mind too, right? That where can adjustments be made? It's always about looking at an adjustment, and we're choosing to spend this money because it's on an asset, something that we can then turn around and sell later on, where as a storage unit, we can't, right? So that money's kind of down the drain. So I think just evaluating everything.
Yeah.
So,
And if you need help evaluating your plan, if you're not already on a New Money Habits budget plan, you can visit our website at newmoneyhabits.com and download our free budgeting worksheet there. That's going to help you to build a plan that is based off of your pay periods. It's also going to help you build a plan that helps you to prioritize your expenses. So those two things that we say are probably the most important thing to your plan. It'll help you to do that. But if you need help beyond that, and you need to sit down and maybe go through your budget with an outside objective observer, know that you can schedule time with myself or with Sarah. You can find links to do that on our website as well. Again, that is newmoneyhabits.com. It's a pleasure, as always, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time to tackle this topic with me today. And we thank everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to continuing the conversation next time.
Thank you for listening to the New Money Habits podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Keeping Up with the Joneses Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our host by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes. Join our growing group of like-minded people on Facebook and follow us on your favorite platform. Music provided by Summer School.